Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
I'm sitting in my hotel room in Mumbai and not talking about Maharashtra because uncertainty still prevails over who the chief minister will be. The BJP has just appointed the observers for its legislature party. So while they work at it, they are at work. We are looking at a place very distant, and that is at Syria. Why Syria? Because there have been dramatic changes in Syria in the past 3.5, 4 days. Look at these two maps. I picked these from one of these awesome Twitter handles. See the colors. If you see the colors, then the colors that show the control of the Syrian regime, that is the Assad regime, suddenly looks like within 5 days it has shrunk greatly. And it has shrunk, it has begun to fade away from the northwestern side, right? If this is Syria, that's north, this is the northwestern side, that's the northeastern side, that goes towards Turkey and Iraq. So from the northwestern side, this regime has begun to lose control. How has that happened? Very dramatically. This is almost as dramatically so far because there's been so little combat that so far this is looking so dramatic that it reminds you of the Taliban move towards Kabul because one domino after the other fell, one city after the other fell, or one garrison after the other fell, and the Taliban suddenly walked into Kabul. So first of all, nobody has walked into Damascus as yet. If anything, forces which are challenging the Assad regime are quite far from Damascus yet. Yet, they are converging in that direction. Once again, if you look at the map, they've taken the city of Aleppo. Aleppo is the second largest city in Syria. It also has the history of being a multicultural, multi-ethnic city. It's not so much anymore. There are some Kurds, there are a few Christians, but most others have left. Remember, Syria is one of the most tragic countries in the world. A tiny country of just over 2.1 crore people to begin with in 2011, when the so-called democratization experiment with the whole Tahrir Square or Arab Spring phenomenon started. At that point, the population might have been about 2.11 crore. Now, nearly 5.6 to 6 million Syrians are refugees outside. More than 500,000 have died in combat, where everybody has been at everybody's throat, and the country is broken. One of the most significant failed states anywhere in the world, but particularly in this very sensitive part of the world. Now, over time, what's happened is, since 2016, everybody had thought Bashar al-Assad's government will fall, or regime will fall. And that's what the Americans also wanted. So Hillary Clinton had announced quite grandly that it's a matter of time before he falls. Obama had also announced something like that, but Bashar al-Assad has survived all of this and has become stronger. So over these years, his forces have been pushing northwards and westwards and driving out the rebels of various kinds. Now, if I start giving you an inventory of the rebel groups or insurgent groups in Syria, that will take a lot of time. So I will just tell you about the broad groupings, also in terms of what is relevant. So while Assad was able to regain control over so much territory, carried out enormous atrocities, at some point used chemical weapons also. That's when Obama said he was drawing a red line, that if chemical weapons are used, then God forbid, God knows what will happen. But nothing happened, because whatever happened is what God willed. And what God willed in this case was Assad getting back control over most of his country, barring some areas in north and the west, some in the east bordering Iraq. They were earlier with ISIS. That's where the Americans still have some presence, and ISIS was driven out. You remember, ISIS had expanded from that area and had built its headquarters or capital in Raqqa, in Syria, bordering Iraq, and then they had also taken the city of Mosul in Iraq, which had also given ISIS access to enormous amounts of crude oil, which they were selling illegally but happily into the neighborhood and also Turkey and onwards. A lot of that was also being done in connivance with many powers, including at one point with the US and Western powers. Because in this place, koi kisi ka nahi hai. Nobody's with everybody. Everybody's double crossing the other guys. Even partners are double crossing each other all the time, just like the plot of that Hindi film Johnny Gadar, where crooks get together, three crooks get together on a heist to make a big killing, but each one meanwhile is trying to kill the other, so he gets all of the loot. That is what goes on in this part of the world as well. Now, what's happened now is, while Assad was able to regain control of much of his territory, the main reason he was able to do it is the Russians supported him actively. The Russians supported him actively, not just by way of advisors, weaponry, ammunition, but also by sending in their air force, their air power. It's Russian air power which laid Aleppo waste in the past. See these pictures. It laid Aleppo waste in the past. Aleppo fell in 2016. It laid it waste in the past. Also, Russians sent the Wagner elements. You know about Wagner elements, Prigozhin, who carried out that infamous or tragic protest or slash protest slash coup, and then his plane suddenly crashed one day. You remember that story? Those elements also came in. So Russia became a very active partner, because for Russia, this is a kind of the front yard. This is a kind of front yard for Russia. This is also the pivot to its influence in the Middle East, Syria, and also it's Russia's access to the Eastern Mediterranean. So Black Sea on one side, that's what Turkey controls. Across Turkey, you have Syria, and then Eastern Mediterranean. So for Russia, Syria provides the pivot between the Eastern Mediterranean, see the map now, Eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea. And that's the reason Russia did not want it falling to any other forces that Russia will not be able to control. The other force that came to the help of Assad, that helped Assad re-establish control over his country and also save his own chair and his own neck, because in those parts people don't just lose power. Much worse things happen after you've lost your power. Iranians came in. The reason the Iranians came in, one of the reasons the Iranians came in, because one, Assad, in a country which is predominantly Sunni, Syrian population is predominantly Sunni. Assad comes from a clan of Alawites. Alawites are followers of Ali, and a kind of sect of Shias. So there was that kinship with the Iranians, but more importantly, Syria is among the stronger neighbors of Israel, which is still hostile to Israel. Egypt might be a much stronger neighbor of Israel, but Egypt is not politically hostile to Israel because they have diplomatic relations. They've recognized each other. They made a big peace agreement. Syria hasn't done it. And also, Syria has Golan Heights, which Israel has annexed, but for Syria, these are their own territories which are in Israeli occupation. So for Iran, it was important to get to Syria, because what happens if they get a foothold into Syria? Once they got a foothold into Syria, they got a clear route through Iraq, because by this time, Americans were pulling out of Iraq, and they had pretty much pulled out of Iraq. Elections were held, and elections put Shiite forces in power in Iraq for the simple reason that Shias are in a vast majority in Iraq. Now, working with that government and their own militias in Iraq, Iranians were able to create a clear corridor from Iran through Iraq into Syria, and through Syria, then through Damascus, in fact, into Lebanon. What does it do? One, it enables Iran to keep resupplying and advising and helping its strongest proxy in the region, that is Hezbollah, its strongest anti-Israel proxy in the region, that's Hezbollah. Houthis are strong also, but Houthis are not just anti-Israel. Houthis are also fighting with Saudis and UAE, etc. Hezbollah is an Israel-specific proxy. So Iranians got a direct access to Hezbollah, and As Assad came under pressure to help Assad, they also drew in Hezbollah elements to fight with him. What has happened now? To understand this, first of all, I will tell you the developments of last 5 days. What's happened over last 5 days is that two different sets of groups, mainly it's a group called HTS. HTS is Hayat Tahrir ul Sham, which means Front for the Conquest or Liberation of Levant. Now, HTS is basically a Salafi Sunni group. Salafi Sunni group does not like the Shias at all. Also, in some ways, while it broke away from Al Qaeda, it's a complex history. It broke away from Al Qaeda, at least disowned Al Qaeda. Nobody believes it, right? You will have to be very gullible to believe it. But they claim that they broke away from Al Qaeda. And before that, they broke away from ISIS in the sense that at one point of time, there was competition between the leadership of AQ, Al Qaeda, and ISIS to get the loyalty of HTS, which earlier was called Jabhatul Nusra. Jabhatul Nusra was a grouping of many other groups, again Sunni Salafi groups. So the full name of Jabhatul Nusra was Jabhat-un Nasra li Ali Asham min Mujahideen Asham fi Sahat al Jihad. Right? Basically, meaning the groups that carry out the jihad for liberation of Sham. Sham is the original name or the Arabic name for the area that in English would be described as Levant. What is Levant? Levant is generally the area west of the Eastern Mediterranean, going right across all of the Middle East. So in fact, while today you might say Sham, Sham is a name that was used traditionally for Syria in Arabian literature, but basically Levant in this case is all of Syria, all of Lebanon, parts of Turkey, Jordan, and definitely Israel, the Palestinian zones, and more. So the pretense of these groups was to liberate all of these through a Sunni Salafist Islamist revolution. It is this group now, Jabhat al-Nusra, ultimately morphed into HTS. Jabhatul Nusra at one point between 2016 and 17, that was the interesting period. That is when Assad had started reacquiring control of the region increasingly. In 2016, there was competition between Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was then controlling Al-Qaeda, and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was controlling, as we know, ISIS. Both those men have been put away, and for good reason. They were both fighting for control or loyalty of the al-Nusra groups. However, Ayman al-Zawahiri issued orders saying that anybody showing loyalty with ISIS was disloyal and will be punished. So most of the group came with Al-Qaeda, whereas some broke away and went with ISIS. So that was the one big breakup. After that, in 2017, the leader of what was left of Jabhat al-Nusra now broke away with Al-Qaeda and merged all four groups under one umbrella. Those groups have now become Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And they are the strongest group that is pushing forward. They've taken most of Aleppo. In fact, one part of Aleppo, the core of Aleppo, strangely, is taken by the Kurdish group. That's one of the Kurdish groups called Syrian Democratic Forces. These are the Syrian Kurds. Kurds, as we've told you in one of the earlier episodes of Cut The Clutter, is one of the largest ethnic groups in the world, largest ethnic multinational groups in the world, with no nation of their own. So there are Kurds in Syria, which we are talking about right now. There are Kurds in Turkey, where they are a big separatist force. That group is called PKK, or Kurdish Workers' Party. That's much more a leftist group, quite hard left in fact. Then Iraq has its own Kurdish groups, and then they go right up to Armenia. So the Kurds think that they will take territories from all these countries and have a Kurdish homeland of their own. And that's why all these big sovereign countries have been fighting the Kurds. So these countries may be at odds with each other over all kinds of things. I forgot to mention Iran in this case. These countries might be at odds with each other over all kinds of things, but they are all together when it comes to beating up on the poor Kurds. In fact, even now, you see in Aleppo, one part of Aleppo, I told you, the core part is with the Kurdish groups. The rest has been taken by HTS. Whereas we've seen pictures, and we'll find some for you, where HTS terrorists, fighters, whatever you want to call them, these are all globally designated terrorist groups. They are now carrying away prisoners, women prisoners from the Kurdish fighting groups, because Kurdish groups are quite secular and modern, and their women also fight alongside men. So some of these women have been taken prisoner, and you can see videos of these HTS people, terrorists, calling them pigs, right? Carrying them on their shoulders, reminding them of what Hamas had done to women on October 7, etc., etc. So it's a very messy situation. Now, SDF is pushed into some areas, particularly towards Aleppo, but most of the movement is being carried out by the HTS group, which with HTS you will find, because once a free for all is broken out, some of the ISIS groups have also come. So among the first big rebel groups was a group that came out of the Syrian army, the Free Syrian Army, FSA. They were trained, they had some discipline, but soon enough that discipline broke, and they controlled some areas, Assad controlled some areas, that fighting went on, and other groups came in. You want to understand this? I myself can't understand it in about a couple of hours. What have I done? I have pulled out this graphic. This looks very confusing, but see this. This will freeze on your screens, and for this, thanks to one of these open source intelligence handles called OSINT613. So thank you very much, OSINT613. You can see the flags of countries there. You can see Turkey on top, the US to the right of Turkey. You see Iran bottom right, and you see Russia in the middle, Bashar al-Assad. Now Bashar al-Assad, and then you see all these arrows going this way or that. Remember now, some are green arrows, some are red arrows. So when something is connected with the other with the green arrow, it means they are fighting alongside each other. They are partners. When something is linked to the other with the red arrow, that means they are fighting against each other. This is how confused this situation is. Broadly, if you want me to say, you can see that the Turks are fighting PKK, that is their own Kurdish group, but at the same time, the Kurds are quite happy to be helping HTS, which is also a Sunni Salafi group. Because what do the Turks want? I will explain to you. Americans, on the other hand, have always been very sympathetic to the Kurdish group, in this case SDF, and for all I know, in this case with HTS as well, because American tension will be with Islamic State, but more importantly with the Iranian groups, and Shia groups, particularly where elements of IRGC, that is Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the elite Iranian fighting force, whose commander General Soleimani had been killed by the Americans towards the last days of Trump administration. Those elements are involved. So see, all this mishmash is going on. Now what's the situation now? HTS elements have pushed forward. They've taken Aleppo. Idlib is an area where they had a small domain of their own, where they ran their own regime under their own Islamic Sharia laws, etc. But it had shrunk quite a bit. Now they've taken Idlib, they've taken Aleppo, they've taken Hama, and if they take Homs, because that's where battle is going on. If they take Homs, because so far Syrian forces have been just folding up and running away, a bit like the Taliban takeover, as I told you, in Afghanistan 3 years ago. But right now, Assad is back. He was in Moscow. He is back. The Iranian foreign minister has visited there. The Russians have fired their general, the lieutenant general based in Syria, and sent a fresh general there. So everybody is getting together to defend the town of the city of Homs. Why? Why is it so important for everybody? Because if Homs falls, then the Russians lose their connection with the port of Tartus and another port and air base that they have near Latakia. You can see both on the map. These are both on Eastern Mediterranean. If that happens, then Russian ability to keep their own units, their own forces resupplied, and also Assad resupplied gets very badly undermined. That's why it's very important for them to protect this. Now, what happens? Why is it that looks like the Americans are happy with this? The Turks are happy with this, of course, because the Turks found, now I will tell you how each one of these characters, because this region also has some of the most interesting and the toughest human beings who happen to be leaders of their countries. So Vladimir Putin is one, Bashar al-Assad is the other, Recep Tayyip Erdogan is the third, Netanyahu is the fourth, and then there is Khamenei. So see, for example, this Khamenei tweet. Khamenei says, look, what's happened right now maybe is good for the cause of Islam because takfirs, the takfiri groups are people who have betrayed Islam and who become like kafirs, like infidels. He's calling HTS and other groups takfiri groups. He says when everybody's attention is focused on the cause of Palestinians and Gaza, etc., these guys have gotten together to distract everybody's attention. See that tweet, because in that lies a larger understanding of what's happening. Why is it that the Americans will be happy with this, and why is it the Israelis will be happy with this? Because this is weakening Assad. This is weakening Assad. With that, it is weakening Hezbollah. Already, Hezbollah is greatly weakened by Israel. Now, if Hezbollah loses their Syrian connection as well and their Syrian sanctuaries as well, it weakens Hezbollah further. In addition, this partly decimates at least sort of to the north of Israel, partly decimates Khamenei's or Iran's Shia crescent. So that goes away. That is a big setback for the Iranian power there. For the Turks, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity because Russians are distracted in Ukraine. Russians were the main backers of Assad. Iranians are punch drunk right now, plus Iranians are fighting many more battles of their own with Iran and now America thrown in, and with Trump coming in, things will get not much better for them. So Iran is distracted there. The Hezbollah group has suffered very heavy reverses and very heavy damage in the fighting with the Israelis. Not to forget the pager operation. In that situation, Erdogan thinks that he has the time and the space to operate, not only to take territory, but also to establish his power in the region. Because what does he want? First of all, he doesn't want Bashar al-Assad to be powerful. Second, he doesn't want Iran to become powerful here. Third, he's got 3.6 million Syrian refugees sitting in his country. He wants them to go away. Then he wants everybody to fight everybody. Now, if HTS and SDF come in conflict, that means a big force like HTF will now be fighting a Kurdish force. One of the big threats to the integrity of Turkey has always been the rebellious Kurds, and he thinks it's partly going to settle that as well. What is America's interest? America's interest is the same as Israel's interest in this case. So in this case, all of the adversaries of Israel are fighting with each other. They are fighting with each other. In the process, the only side that's gaming among this lot is Turkey. Turkey might have made a big pretense of breaking relations with Iran just the other day, but it was just a week back that the head of Shin Bet, the Israeli internal intelligence agency, met the head of Turkish intelligence. So stuff goes on there. And remember, Turkey, at the end of the day, is a NATO member. Turkey also sits astride access to Black Sea. So any shipping going through those narrow lanes into Black Sea, where the Russians are exposed to Ukrainians' missiles and the rest, these are also governed by old conventions, Montreux conventions. According to many observers, at this juncture, Turkey has become more powerful than it's ever been in the entire region since the Ottoman period, and it's a member of NATO. So in the bigger picture, you can see it is the Syrian, Hezbollah, anti-Israeli, anti-Western axis which is weakening. in the process, people who are getting stronger, people who are winning and who are getting territory are not nice guys. These are the Sunni Salafi extremists, terrorists of HTS, and some groups of ISIS also thrown in. But then you know what? The fact is that in these parts, there is no such thing as nice guys. So whoever wins are bad guys. Nice guys don't win. Nice guys either left the place and became refugees, or they are now lying 6 feet under.